All right, welcome to the next episode. Some of you might get that reference. A little old school. Tonight we're going to do something a little different. We have not worked on a Velodyne yet live, so it's time to do that. I have a repeat customer that has actually sent this out with one of his other amps, and I said I'd take a look at it and get it done. And I have a ton of Velodyne amps I need to personally do, but I want to get this one working for him. So he was on the waiting list and waited quite a long time, as a lot of you have, and I apologize for that. I kind of bit off more than I can chew for one person. I have a tremendous amount of requests, and I'm struggling to keep up with them all. But as long as you're patient, I'll try and get to it. I'll do my best. So let's get into this thing. I've done absolutely nothing to it yet. So here it is, fresh out of the box. I have no clue what's wrong with it, but it was manufactured in 2001, so it's time for a recap, if nothing else. But we're gonna dig into this. I'm gonna take it apart and see if I can see anything that's wrong with it, and then we'll go from there. Interesting things I'm noticing already. This header that they soldered on here is surface mount. It was not soldered properly. That's interesting, because Velodyne usually is pretty high quality on their stuff. I recognize this box here. This is where the drive circuits are for the outputs. Velodyne puts them in a shielded box. The DD Digital Drive Series uses this box. It's probably pretty close to the same circuit. See, they have a factory rework on the bottom here. There's a wire that's been soldered and glued. Well, let's dig into it and see what we can figure out. These things are a pain to take apart. There's so many like screws and nuts, and let's see. I think these even use Allens, which makes it even more of a pain. But we will get it out and get it going. Hopefully. I probably will not have all the caps that are needed for this. I did get my desk rearranged and cleaned up. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Move some things around, made some changes. It's a lot more efficient of a work area. Like, I'll even zoom out. Like, there's really no mess. Over here it's a little messy. We'll just ignore that. Don't look at that. But the rest of it is kind of organized and functional. So we're getting there. We're getting there. I did some cable management, moved my PC, and we're just trying to make it better. So I'm going to look at the input side of this first. There's a fuse. The fuse appears to be good. We'll just do a quick continuity check. There's a couple fuses on here. This, I believe, is our main fuse. Yeah, because this has the hardwired cord coming into it. So the fuse is inside. That fuse is good. I suspected it was. It looked good. And this fuse is good. So far so good. This could just be a simple issue with noise. Maybe I'll just take a second and look at the email that was sent to me and see if I can figure out what's wrong with it instead of just guessing. And if you've emailed me, I apologize. Like, I have so many emails that I get. It's hard to go through them all, and I just don't have the time to do this every day. I wish I did. I really want to, but I purchased a EM client to kind of handle my emails and help me read through these a little better. So hopefully it will make it a little more efficient for me, at least for like replying, like the forums and all that. Like, I get so many messages. It's hard to It's almost a full-time job just trying to answer emails. So if I have not replied back to you, don't feel like you're being ignored. I'm really not ignoring you. I just haven't had time to reply yet. So, all right, let's dig into this. And I looked for the email, and it was in a different message. So I'm not gonna search through all those. We're just gonna dig into it and work on this thing. It's gonna get a recap no matter what. So I figure we will start there. Now, I want to get this amp portion off of the board. And I think I can do that fairly easily by just removing the brackets that hold this power section on. And of course they're Allens. Do I have... No, I do not. I need to go grab my Allen drivers. I will be right back. That's interesting. I didn't know when I did the be right back it did a weird, like, zoomed out image. It makes me wonder if I'm using digital zoom or something. I'm gonna have to figure that out. Anyways, I didn't have to go far. I had my trusty snap-on down here, and I hate this screwdriver. I'm not gonna lie. I had the original version of this, which was like molded plastic, and somebody stole it from me when I was at work. I love that screwdriver. My grandpa got it for me, so I loved it even more. And I found them on eBay, but they're kind of expensive, so I haven't really bothered trying to replace it. But this newer, upgraded version is nowhere near as good as the old one, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm using Torx bits. It's not the best way to pull these screws out, but it'll do it if you're careful. Otherwise, I gotta go all the way up into the garage and make a bunch of noise and make the dog mad and probably make the wife mad. So we will do it with this. Take-aparts are always boring. So I apologize for that. Oh, okay. I'm reading on the back. It says it's video shielded, ultra efficient Class D amp, 3-inch high temperature voice coil, 750 watts RMS. So this is a pretty powerful sub for a 10-inch. I mean, I know Velodyne doesn't mess around. They make some pretty good stuff, especially their older stuff. I think their newer stuff. Well, they don't make newer stuff. They got out of the speaker gig. They do cars now. I'm sure that ratchet's driving some of you nuts, and I apologize for that too. And one of the things I dislike about this is when you're using this as a regular driver, this end cap comes off. So you're constantly having to, tighten that back on. This is where you're supposed to store your little bits. Yeah, I don't have anything in there, but it only comes on and off so many times before it gets really loose and doesn't stay on. The other one was just better designed. I don't know. Not much we can do about that. Find the thief and take it back. That was a long time ago. Alright. So our plate is loose. We got some looks like epoxy, or looked like epoxy. I don't know what it is. We'll call it crusty honey. Let's see what we got here. So this is in fantastic shape compared to most of the other ones I've seen. Like, this thing is clean. The board's not burnt. The traces, and these boards have really little traces that go to these high-powered resistors. You can see, well, you can kind of see them. But these things sometimes will get really hot and burn, so you got to look at it. But I mean, these resistors look like they're brand new. Everything on this looks pretty good. I'm quite surprised. I have not seen one this clean in a while. Kudos to whoever owns this. They either have a hell of a wife, or they take some pride in keeping their house like spotless. Or it sat in a box for 20 years and never came out. I might have to go get sockets for this too. I forgot that these nuts are kind of a pain, or actually a nut driver. I'll show you a little hillbilly trick. Actually, I don't even think that's turning. It's probably not. It would have been nice if they screwed those into the plate, but I think they just float through, so we could probably get them off this way without having to go up to the garage. Oh, wrong size. Got me. Tricked me. Wait, now I'm confused. I only had one out that had the yellow band on it. Do they really use two different size Torx on here? Oh man, they do. Gosh, how terrible is that? Whoever made that executive decision should be fired immediately. Hopefully these will come out. Button heads are always a nightmare too because they strip very easily. I think we're going to be okay. I think we will be just fine. Now this one had two plastic spacers under it. I'm not quite sure why. But luckily that's documented on video, so when I forget where they go, I'll be able to look right away and figure it out. Sounds to me like my ratchet is starting to fail on this thing. This one is double nutted, so that, yeah, alright. Well, I'm gonna have to go get a driver anyway, so I'll show you a little redneck trick, I guess. If you need to get a bolt and you need to get a driver for it, just take your thumb and just pop that baby into your thumb. And it leaves a nice little mark in there, the perfect size of this thing. So if you can't take the nut with you, you could take your thumb with you and you can go match up the socket size. Obviously I have a nut, so I'm going to take it, but it's worked for me. So bear with me, I'll be back again. Alright. Hopefully I don't need to go anywhere anymore. I got my nut driver, which makes it way easier. These do have a little bit of goop on them. Velodyne was pretty serious about shielding any of their components that generated noise. I'm not quite sure why they did that. I mean, in 2001, flat screens were, you know, pretty much the thing. Nobody was. Well, I guess CRTs and you know, some tube TVs were still around. Flat screens were still fairly new at that point. And either way, they did some serious shielding on this. So this is the input board. You know, it has all the op amps on it, and you know, all the signal processing. And there are some caps, I believe. Yeah, there's 2 caps here, and I think there's some caps like littered around on the other side of this board, if I remember correctly. So I'm gonna get in there and at least just take a look. I want to make sure that if there are, they're gonna get replaced. That's a little work, you know, digging down into here and getting all these nuts out. I should have grabbed the socket for these too, but that's alright. I can get in there and get these 2 out. A little dielectric grease hasn't hurt me yet, so I don't understand why they went through the trouble to resus these. The plate is pretty, you know, I don't want to say monstrous thick, but it's pretty thick. It's a good 1/8 inch thick. Alright, so that's free. Just take the rest of these nuts off. I see now why they used the plastic spacers, at least on that screw. So this center one here is shorter and uses a plastic spacer. I'm just saying that for my personal remembering. Single plastic spacer. Maybe that screw will just stay in. Now I'm not 100% sure there's caps under here, but I vaguely remember that there were some. Oh, look at this, Velodyne made in China. There's the kanji glyphs. That's disappointing to see. California company selling you Chinese-made junk. So this is the new version of the digital drive, the China version. Nothing against China, but they're not exactly known for using the highest quality components when you're manufacturing something using cheap labor. Alright, we're gonna very carefully try to weeble wobble this out of here. We've got 2 screws that need to come out. And this star washer has to go, because I will lose it for sure. Got 1 screw for the terminals, or 2 screws for the terminals and 1 screw for the RCAs. Another junk screwdriver made by Snap-on. I'm not even going to use it. That's how much I do not like that. It's non-magnetic. Boom. See how nice that is? Cheap screwdriver from Amazon. Beats the Snap-on screwdriver. I used to like Snap-on. I don't really like them anymore. Stuff is junk now. Alright. Plus I work for their competitor, so I have to say that. Alright. Let's see what we got here. And as I remembered, there are a ton of caps under there. So you can see them all little beep beep boops littered all around there. So, no matter what, since this amp is, Velodyne is still high-end audio gear. It's not like Martin Logan or anything like that, but it's definitely not cheap, like this sub cost a pretty penny in its day, and it's still worth, most of that, so I'm not going to do a 50% repair on a good amp like this. That epoxy doesn't need to be there, and it's bothering me. This might have been like hot glue at one point, but it's like fossilized. So I mean, it's going to be fairly difficult working on these caps. I don't want to say impossible, but with all these board reworks that are kind of like littered about, somebody clearly made some serious mistakes on this board, and instead of re-rolling the board, they just glued a bunch of crap on it and sent it. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I didn't design the board. Not what I would do, but it's only a 2-layer board too, and there's no ground planes on it. Oh, let's see, this board was used on 2 different models. It can be an SPL10 or an SPL12. I wonder what changes on there. Probably just a couple component values. This model is new to me. I have not worked on the SPL series. I've just done digital drives, so. But if I can fix a digital drive, I can fix an SPL. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to fix this and make it sing. Try to, anyways. I haven't figured that out yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh yeah, I forgot about the spacer on these guys. I gotta take the spacers. So don't lose your spacers. Those are important. What else is on here that I'm forgetting? Yeah, testing might be a little bit of a challenge because as I was putting my bench back together, there's another thing I was tinkering around with. This is the JBL. The owner donated it to me to try and just do whatever. It would be too cost prohibitive to repair. I mean, I literally have to rebuild the entire surface of the board. I have it epoxied in right now, the first coat. That's got to be sanded down, flush, and then recoated. And I haven't done the backside yet, but I'll peel this tape and just show you the extent of the damage and why I won't repair something like this. I did it for one customer, and I will not do it again. So this is the good side after being cleaned, and you can see how much of the board and copper is just gone. So all the black on there is actually where the board was burned, and I sandblasted it, and that couldn't even get it out, and I was just blowing holes through the board. Like, you can see through it. Kind of. It's a little bit opaque, but you can see through the board. So yeah, if you send me a JBL and it has holes in the board, I'm gonna unfortunately not take on the repair. It's not worth it. It's too much time. You can just buy a replacement amp, even an external amp, and use it that way. I hate to turn down a repair. I'm gonna repair this one just because it was donated, and I'll be able to resell it to recoup a little bit of my time that I have put into it. But we're talking several weeks just to get this repair done with all the different steps I have to do, and it's way down on the list. Like, this is back burner. And if I don't ever get it done, I don't. I'm not going to really worry about it. But anyways, back to the Velodyne. I'm going to start the recap on this, so I'm going to heat up the solder sucker. I guess while that's waiting up, I can give a little preview of my bench changes. because I randomly forget to do the camera. But you can see that my silent speaker is no longer mounted here. It's mounted to this side of the wall. Just kind of simplified. I have to get my function generator mounted up here somewhere. But I put a huge board up, and I made sure that I mounted it real good. And then I also moved my computer. So my computer is now mounted on the wall, so I have more shelf space. But I still have my current limited tester with my 1 amp limit with the 100 watt light bulb in there. That's pretty much a staple, but a little more organized, a little more fluid, and I have room to expand now as I add more like equipment and stuff like that. So we are still heating up, so while we're heating I will show you my next disaster. This used to be my signal generator, and it was cheap. I got it off of Amazon, but it's really good. But unfortunately, it only takes 5 volts, and I plugged 12 volts into it, so I blew up the screen and probably a few things on this board. I ordered another one. It should be here tomorrow, and I also ordered a replacement screen, so hopefully I'll be able to do something with this and get it running, and hopefully the new one will be, you know, the same. Looks a little bit different, but I have another way that we can test it just by using the audio output from the computer or my cell phone. So I'm not, you know, out of commission, but I'm sad that I was dumb enough to make that mistake. All right, we are heated now. Let's get into recapping. Dickerson Ford sent a link to my channel. Dickerson, I don't accept links in my channel. Unless it's a link to my webpage or a link to some coffee you're going to buy me. So we're going to just go ahead and remove that, because I don't know what that link means. And I don't want your crap in my video. Alright, so these are CapExons. They're not the worst caps in the world, but they're not Nichicons either. None of them really look vented, but you know, like I said, this amp is, you know, over 20 years old now, which is hard to believe, but it's time. Time for a recap and a refresh. And I can see already that this glue is going to just murder me. Luckily it melts pretty easy. Yep, that was dumb. So it's some sort of rubberized something. It does melt. Luckily I didn't just totally toast my finger there. They seem to kind of splatter this stuff in here though. I will not be re-gluing the caps underneath the input board. I think that is not necessary. But I'm looking for signs of leakage on the bottom of these. And, you know, seeing if there's any electrolytic fluid on there. This one looks a little bit questionable. Again, these are like low tier caps. CapExons are not like complete garbage, but they're not like good either. So 220 at 25 volts. I should have a lot of these. I think I have a couple different sizes of these bad boys. We will use the ones that I have that are more abundant. Polarity is marked nicely, so that's always good. I want to make sure we put them in correctly. I think height is the most critical aspect on these. You want to make sure you're within the height of this back plane. But if you have a piece of equipment that's 20 years old, like, and it has any sort of issues at all, like, don't even think about it. Recap it. Like, just start the recapping process. Yeah, it takes time. Yeah, it's going to cost a little bit of money to do, you know, or if you have to send it out and have it done. But if you have an issue, like, don't just pay somebody to fix the problem. Pay them to, you know, refurbish the sub. It's an investment to get it repaired. Why not, you know, make good on that investment and have your equipment repaired properly. That's how I, you know, that's the best advice I could give. So you have power coming in from here, from that transformer, the auxiliary supplies. It's probably plus minus 15 or something like that. Yeah, 7815 and 7915. So plus minus 15 supply, and that's going to power all the op amps that are on the board. So these are discrete diode bridge coming in, filtering the AC to DC, and then these are your filter caps prior to your linear regulators. So they did a pretty decent job on this. Just should have kept going and used higher quality parts and fixed the reworks on the board and actually did it the right way instead of putting bodge wires all over and having them glued down. Now, there is the mild chance that this was done by, you know, somebody else. I don't know. It'd be hard to believe with the condition that this amp is in. I can't rule it out. Like, this could be, you know, another repair person's work, but I don't know, man. This thing is pretty clean. I guess we'll find out when we go to flip the power switch, right? But Velodynes usually suffer from cheap caps and you know, the cheap caps, they start leaking and they either damage the board or, you know, cause other issues. And those issues, you know, cause the sub to not function properly. I did, by the way, find out what I'm going to do with all these old caps. And I had a user reach out to me and he said, you know, they're aluminum. He said, just throw them all in a bucket, and when you fill them up, take them and you can recycle them with dirty aluminum. So that's what I'm going to do. Or maybe I'll just melt them down in the backyard and cast them into something. I don't know. But either way, those caps are aluminum. Now I have to get some of this off, of course, because the cap I need is like right under it. It melts pretty easy though. I'm kind of surprised by that. It does. Oh, it peels off real easy too. Maybe I'll just pull this crap off and put a couple of blobs of E6000 on there. I think that's what I'm going to do, because it comes off pretty easy. It's like a rubberized, kind of waxy type of, I don't know what it is. It's weird. Probably causes cancer. Let's see if there's anything right in there. No, there's two over here. Yeah, I'll put a couple of blobs of 6000 on there. I'll never even know. But I do have to get underneath this in some weird areas, so. It's almost like whatever this is didn't fully cure, because it's not silicone. If it is, it's a very weird silicone that I'm not used to. Like a weird electronics grade or something, but I don't know. But I need to get to some of these caps that just happen to be right underneath the wires. And they have bent leads, which makes it even more exciting. Hope that was the right part. Yep. Yep, we got it. Kind of. These bent leads just are enough to drive you wacky. Luckily this is a 2-layer board, so a little easier to work on. There's no planes or anything, so I can get in here and do what I need to do fairly efficiently. 47 at 25. I don't know if yes, I do have some of those. Probably my least used cap. Hopefully all these are 47 at 25. And I got a magnifying glass it just to make sure it's not 4.7. And my little magnifying glass is gone. I know I had it out here. I used it yesterday when I cried over my function generator being murdered. Alright, anybody that's watching, where's my magnifying glass? I know you can see it, but I can't. Well, we'll have to eyeball it. Eyeball it and get it right. Oh, darn it. I was to say, I have this now. This is hooked up and ready to rock. This is my microscope. I will be able to stream now with the microscope for some of the finer details. So that's hooked up and ready to go. I just need to put a USB extender on it. I'm going to say that's 47. That's 47. Looks like 47. So yeah, exciting new things coming to the repair channel. Hopefully, you know, I can keep making, you know, better and better content. The whole purpose of doing this is, you know, to give everybody a bird's eye view of, you know, what they need to do to fix their stuff. I'm still just doing this for fun. I still have a day job. When I get to the point to where I can do this 24/7, then it'll be a little different, but I don't think we're going to be there anytime soon. I have enough repair requests to probably get there, but I don't I don't have the ability to get that many completed. I don't even think I could hire an employee if I wanted to, because I wouldn't be able to find anybody that could actually do this kind of work. I would need a lot of training. Not that I couldn't train somebody to do it, just I don't. It wouldn't be easy. It would not be an easy thing to do. Alright. Let's keep popping away at these caps there. Trying not to be too destructive on these bottom reworks if I can. The solder sucker is very unforgiving though. It pretty much takes what it can, and you know, if there's a solder blob in the way, it claims it. This one is glued in rather good. Make sure I don't damage the writing on it. We're going to rip them out. There we go. Tear that glue blob out too. Wait, what is this stuff? Uh-oh. It's starting to show its age. The seal is getting brittle. Really brittle. It's starting to crumble. It lost its sponginess. So we got to be a little careful with that so we don't damage it, because it's going to start to flake off. It's gotten hard and crusty, which is common. I don't really think there's any way to rejuvenate that. If you put water on it, it'll just disintegrate. Maybe like a little Armor All or something, but I'm going to leave it alone. Another 47 at 25. Yeah, hopefully there won't be a big nasty air leak. Yeah, I mean, you could redo this with like simple weather stripping, but I don't want to have to do that. I want it to be good to go when I'm ready to send it. I'll retack that film cap on that pad there. Interesting that they have the film caps just tacked onto these random places, and they didn't really just put through holes on there and patch them in. Like, they could have just, there's space on there, they could have put it in the board. I don't know what they were thinking when they did this. I really don't. We will continue. You gotta be a little careful when you get the big monster next to some of these surface mount components, because you can inadvertently just heat everything up so much it'll just take them right off the board. So if you're using a solder sucker, be careful. Here's our first new value. This is 0.47 micro at 50 volts. And I have a few left, not many. It's again a not very common one. I think Sunfire uses some of these. Just I'm double checking the values on all these, just because I'm not, you know, I don't normally do these, so I'm not really familiar with what values go where. So it doesn't hurt to like double and triple check everything. I mean, a cap value, you know, that's wrong isn't really going to be the wrong, or, you know, the end of the unit. Unless the cap's installed backwards, it would still probably function, but if it's in the audio path, you could change the way that the thing sounds. And I don't want to do that. It might still work, but, and then you got to try and go back and figure out what you did wrong. And none of these things have schematics. At least that I've found. I've stopped looking for Velodyne schematics. They just don't exist. Let's see if I can get this one out without peeling that stuff off. I will say that Velodyne does use pretty decent quality boards, though, even though they're Chinese made. I don't think I've ever pulled a through hole off one of them yet. 2.2 at 50. my capacitor collection with these component shortages, I bet you I have like 20,000 in caps sitting by me. I should just sell these things and take a vacation. I couldn't do that though. All you guys would miss me. Alright. Keep chugging away. Trying to be careful not to get the glue melted in, because it is, you know, pretty close to where I'm soldering here, and it's actually covering part of the pad. So I'm just going to take my little pick and just kind of try and force it away. I mean, it'll burn off, but I'd rather not have contaminants in my solder joint if I don't have to. Okay, we got a couple more on this board here, and it will be almost good as new. A couple of caps hiding in some weird places in there. Let's do him next, just because I found it and want it out of there. Whoever the guy is on the assembly line that bent these leads, if he's still alive, he's my enemy now. .7 at 50. That's the first 4.7. This is directly in the audio path. Yep. So this would be an important one not to screw up. I hope these RCA connectors are okay. I mean, they look all right. That doesn't mean they are, but we can hope. Those are getting harder and harder to find. I have a couple different versions, but I don't know if I have one that would fix this. Everything's happy after it gets new caps and some leaded solder. New caps and leaded solder changes the world. Now, I'd recommend that, you know, when I send this back to you, you don't, you know, feed it to any of your animals or, you know, significant others. It will have some lead in it, so yeah, don't chew on the circuit boards for your own health and safety. But once the amp leaves my bench, you know, like, I can't really tell you what to and not to do with it. I can just advise, and that is what I advise. There is leaded solder on there, and it is probably bad for your health if you start licking the circuit board. So it looks like almost every one of these op amps has a filter cap on it, on the power supply, which is kind of nice. That helps a little bit keeping the supply stabilized and reduces noise. Plugging away here. $470 at 16. That's a big monster there. Uh-oh, he might be a little bit too tall. Let's see, can we squeeze him in there? Nope, he ain't gonna fit. We can cheat though. We might be able to cheat. Nope, don't have to. Don't have to. Sunfire saved it. I got a squatty fat one. Ooh, that's tight. That's tight, but it fits. Lead spacing looks like it's maybe a little bit off, but we're gonna go with it anyways. It will fit underneath there, just barely. Sunfire saved the day. Sunfire HRS series uses those squatty 470s. HRS 10 and HRS 12. I'm actually going to do one of those hopefully this weekend. As I was cleaning up, I found one that was like 60% done, and for whatever reason I stopped. So now I'm going to get back and get that finished. Looks like I am out of 470 at 25 volt though. I'm going to have to order some of them. Let's do a little lead snipping here. Tidy up a little bit. Yeah, they use silicone on these resistors here. I really want to know what this white crap is. Some sort of fancy glue. But it's non-conductive, so I don't know, maybe it's good. Maybe I should get some of it. I really don't like the way they soldered that on there. I might redo this connector here. I don't like the way they soldered that on. Doesn't meet my standards of approval. I don't know if I'll be able to get it off though without beating up the board. I'll have to play with that. I don't know. I'm indeterminate right now. I'll probably fix it. I think it should be fixed. I haven't made my mind yet up though. This guy's a little bit tight. We gotta be careful we don't burn the op amp. I did not want to come out. Doesn't appear to have leaked. 47.25 volts. So far I haven't really found anything that makes me really believe that this thing has any serious problems. I have not yet dug into the Class D supply yet. So I'm not gonna rule that out yet, but generally, if the fuses aren't blown, the Class D supply should be okay. Hopefully the woofer's not damaged on this. But if it is, you can replace the driver. You can find a driver that's got specs that are somewhat similar. And 22 at 16. I don't think I have that. Yeah, 22 at 16 is not a common value. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to go 22 at 25. And that will be just fine. Can always go up in voltage as long as the package size stays the same. Like a lot of older values, like 16 and 25 volts, they just don't make them anymore. They just make them in 50, and it's the same size as the 16 volt. So you can always increase the voltage on a cap. Perfectly safe to do, and recommended when you can't find the correct value. I use a lot of 2250s. Alright, let's see, we got like 6 more to go, and then the input board will be done. Clean my solder sucker out. That thing's working phenomenal right now, even with the old tip. Give it a real good cleaning. So this guy is 1 microfarad at 50 volts. I should have that. I might get lucky. I might have all these caps. Let's make sure that wasn't polarized. Where did that guy go? Or non-polar. No, it was polarized. I just can't see the little plus on the board. Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised I haven't seen any non-polars on here yet. That's kind of weird. You would think that typically bipolar caps are used in audio circuits. I haven't not seen one yet. This board might not have any. Maybe they do everything in DC. Some of these amps, they operate pretty weird. Like, they actually split the audio signal into a positive and a negative section and then recombine it at the output. I don't know what class that is. Maybe that's a Class D thing. I don't know. I have not studied and researched the topologies and how they all work. I've just researched how to fix these things and make them work again. That guy's gone, but it was 1 UF at 50. I'm just throwing them across the room. 1 UF at 50. So we got 3 more inside the foam and 2 outside the foam. And then, nope, 3 outside the foam. 6 more to go. last 3 in the corner here, then 2 here, and 1 hiding over here where I think the LED plugs on. That should be everything, I believe. Not a difficult amp to recap. I wouldn't say it's fun just because of all the take apart, but definitely workable even for an amateur. You could probably, you know, use a cheap solder sucker on here. Half Baked was watching and said something and then recanted his message. I would have liked to have heard what Half Baked had to say. Still nothing on here that raises any red flags. 47 at 25 volts. Counting down, 5 after this. I got a question in my email today, and there's somebody that just likes watching the repairs, but he wants to know why I don't do time lapse and why, you know, I let these videos drag on forever. The only good answer I can give you for that is I don't want to take the time to edit all these. I'm pressed for time as it is, and I struggle to just have enough time to get these repairs, you know, in and done. That's why I have to do most of these, you know, 12:30 in the morning or at night, morning. No, yeah, 12 is morning, yeah. So, you know, this is really the only time I have to do these. If, you know, if I was editing videos, I wouldn't be able to sleep. I don't have the time for all that. Plus, when you do time lapse and speed it up, like, you can't communicate really. You have to like narrate and voice over everything. So on top of editing the videos, I'd have to pretty much re-record most of all the audio on there. It's just too much of a time investment for me. I just can't. Let me unsolder the leg that shouldn't have been unsoldered. So yeah, simple answers is I just don't have enough time. If somebody wants to, you know, download one of my videos and do like some rapid voiceovers on them and speed them up, hey, go ahead. I give anybody permission to do so. But if you monetize your channel, you have to give me 50% of it. How's that? Because I'm doing all the work. Alright. We're on to the last one on the inside. Solder that leg back up that we accidentally cleared. So far this board's been really nice to work on. I mean, I know I said it was in great condition, but I haven't had any problems whatsoever working on this. Everything unsolders nicely, no pads are tearing off. I mean, it's a fairly simple board. There's a lot of stuff on here, but it's only a 2-layer board, so I can't promise that the board inside this thing will be any easier though. That one's usually the one that make you swear a little bit. I put 3 of those on my shelf. It was kind of depressing. Like, organizing everything was really depressing. Seeing how much stuff I actually have to get through and do. But we'll get through it. And my wife promised she would help me with shipping, so if you're on the shipping list and waiting for something, you're about to get your stuff. I am getting anxious to get this board back into the frame though, because this foam on here is deteriorating and getting all over my fingers. So the less I handle this board, the better off it's going to be. You know, I'm being careful, I'm not trying to damage it, but you can see where some of it's, you know, flaking off a little bit. Really nothing I can do about it. I'm just checking polarities really quick, double checking to make sure I didn't screw anything up. Because when I put this back on, it is not coming off for another 20 years. This sub will be a rock star when I'm done with it. It'll probably sound better too. I know subwoofers don't really have a sound to them, it's just noise, but putting higher quality caps in the audio path will definitely improve it. I don't know if it'll change it, it'll improve it. Let's see, 47 at 25. That means the other one is probably 47 at 25. It is. We'll do both at the same time. This one's got some glue under it. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel all this crap off and I'm going to hit it with some E6000. It's a little bit more work, but it's not enough to where it's going to cause any issues, and the E6000 is just better. Did not unsolder. Did that time, so that has a jumper wire going to the positive side of the cap. Interesting. I don't get it. Felt a little sticky, but yeah, it doesn't look bad. I don't know. I can't tell. I really can't tell. Doesn't appear to have been leaking, but maybe. I haven't found anything that like really sticks out and says this is why I'm having issues. I'll tell you what I might do though, is since there is a jumper lead on this, I think I'm gonna hardwire it, to be honest. Get rid of that crappy wire. Show you how we do it in the pros. So that wire, this brown wire here, went from the positive. It's still soldered down. That went from the positive to this fourth pin. I don't know if that's a through hole. Is that a through hole on there? Might be. What is this? It is a little through hole. Interesting. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my wire bender 5000, which is going to be probably this drill bit because it's skinnier than that toothpick. And I'm going to bend it. I'm going to find this. And I'm going to bend it again. If I can force it down there. Then I'm going to unbend it. Then I'm going to rebend it. Then I'm going to snip it. And we just replaced that wire with a solid jumper now. Might have snipped that a little too short, but if I did, you know what, I'll just put a new cap on there. I think that will reach just fine. A little bit of making it jive, but good enough. We got it down into that pad. Actually, it's got to come just a little bit more. So I don't know. This is not something they'd probably do in the factory. Whatever. It does say that there is a jumper on the board, so maybe that is intentional. I'm not sure. There's a jumper wire that goes to that pad, so I'm jumping it. But I'm jumping it with a cap lead. And it'll still get glued down, so. But it's a way more robust connection. And I'm actually going to make sure it's forced into that through hole. And then to make it look even a little more factory, where I put the dent in there, I'm just going to run my toothpick underneath it and pop that dent out. And make sure it's not touching the board. Cap still seems happy. There's plenty of room in there, so I'm going to solder it down. We eliminated a jumper. So we cheated a little bit, but we got rid of this stupid little wire here that you guys probably can't see, but no reason for that. If you're allergic to dogs, make sure you tell me before you send me your equipment, because I do have a dog and pet hair gets everywhere. I don't want anybody to go into anaphylactic shock because you got some dog hairs on one of your amps. So keep that in mind. So I'm just peeling off this gummy white junk, just because I don't really know what it is, and it's kind of old and like gooey, and I'm gonna replace it. I'll replace it with E6000. It doesn't stick on the board really good, so that tells me that it's probably not that great to begin with. Like, even these caps that it's stuck to is not, it's not the best. You know, it's not an issue where I think it's going to become conductive or anything like that. It's just there's something better out now. I'm going to leave the resistor alone because that looks like silicone mixed with that crap. The film caps seem to be stuck pretty good. What I might do on some of these is, if they're out of shape, fix them. Like this one that's not sitting in his home. And, I mean, these really don't need anything on them. The wires definitely do, but the little caps don't. Let's do this one more guy up here. And then I'm going to glue it right away. I want to make sure that I give the glue time to set up before I get this thing ready to be put back together. 47 at 25. That's great. This amp uses almost all the caps that I never use. Couldn't ask for a better setup. Now, there's a solder blob on here that I did not do. Oh, that's that wire. Okay. That's important. Never mind. Solder blob is the DOGE wire, or whatever kind of wire you want to call it. Jumper wire. Factory failure wire. Could have been they just didn't have enough space on the board to get the routings done. And this is how they decided to do it. I don't know. Whatever the reason. Okay, recap is done. It looks good. I'm going to trim the leads. Then we're going to glue it and move on to the other section. Nope, almost all. One more set of leads. Alright. Let's put some glue on this bad boy. If I can find it. Yes, here it is. E6000 of the clear variety. Hopefully it's yeah, it's not hardened. I'm just gonna have a nightmare getting this cap off, which I will probably damage it and won't be able to get it back on. I'm going to do the right thing and not go get a pair of pliers and just use what I got. And we're going to just coat the reworks. Now, I do not see a reason to have to coat the entire thing. Just the important areas. So this wire's got a little bend in it. We'll get the bend. you know, you don't want to put too much glue on there, so I'm not just splattering it everywhere. I'm taking my time and making sure it's on there good. This wire wants to lift up from the board. So one of the things I am going to do is tape it down. And I'm not going to glue the entire wire. So I'm going to tape it right here in the middle. And I'm going to put another little piece right here. And that should just hold it in place long enough to let the glue set up. And this E6000 is really good stuff. The next person that has to work on this amp is going to hate me for doing this, but like I said, that should be about 20 years down the road. So I'm not too worried about it. We'll glue this cap back down. This stuff does set up fairly quickly though, so you should be in pretty good shape. Put a little path right there in the middle. It is self-leveling too, which is really nice. I don't know, it's just good stuff. You can use it for speaker repairs, you can use it for stuff like this. It's great glue, E6000. Buy some. Alright, so this is good. I'm going to leave this connector alone for now. Let my glue kind of set up a little bit and move on to this. I don't think it's an immediate need right now that I mess around with that. It is an immediate need though to get this box off of here and get it opened up, and that is not going to be fun. But we definitely need to recap inside of this cage here. This is the Class D circuits. And the speaker drivers are in there. This has a ton of, every one of these screws has a star washer and a spacer. So we gotta get those off so I can remove this board from these brackets. And I know I'm using the garbage screwdriver, but for this it doesn't need to be magnetic. Alright. Off the brackets. Don't lose the little standoffs. You can see this is going to be fun to put back together. Alright, now bad glue is used on this. That's got to go. So there will be more E6000 in our future. I am probably going to have to switch my soldering tips. Yeah, those guys are just too big. Clean out the solder sucker. I'm going to turn the power out. Let that cool off for a minute to change the tips, and I'm going to try and work on getting this glue off of here. That's going to be an issue. Let's see how loud my, oh, it's quiet now. I put some foam underneath my hot air station and it really made it shut up. At least on my end. I don't know if it's quieter on your end, or, you know, with the microphone picking it up, but definitely sounds better over here. Well, this glue has not yet started to become conductive. There's a couple spots on here that concern me, but this is just that garbage glue, and again, you know, this is a repeat customer, so I'm not going to spare any expense when I'm doing this repair. I want to make sure it's done right. What I might do is just replace this wire. So I don't know how easy it is going to be to get all that off. I mean, I have to take it off of that pin anyways. Well, maybe it won't be that bad. It actually does peel off. And that goes to the third pin. I don't think I'm going to have enough heat. Oh, maybe I do. I'll be. Yeah, this might not be too bad. Just peel it up and comes off pretty good. Alright. A lot easier than I expected it was going to be. I guess when the glue doesn't get totally gnarly, it's still a little bit savable. Still got to pick a little bit, but that's alright. I can pick. This will be also redone with 6000. Got some little capacitors and stuff that are underneath this side, so I want to be a little bit careful. But you can see where there's voltage underneath this, the stuff starts turning black. So you gotta be careful with this glue. This glue it'll get you. It's the only way I can describe it. It will eventually roar its ugly head and really screw up your amp. I don't know what it is about electricity that screws it up, but the glue is not voltage friendly. I don't know how else to describe it. Get as much of it off as we can. %, would be ideal. Unrealistic, but ideal. I'll take like 85 or 90%, as long as it's not touching any of the components on there. A little bit of the glue residue is fine. We don't want to damage any traces or anything like that, you know, over glue. But we want it out of there. Leaving a little bit on the wire is probably acceptable. Having a piece fly up your nose, that's okay too. stings a little bit. Flew up there at about Mach 5. Alright, I'm happy with that. So, you know, we got all the glue off the wire. We didn't get it off the insulation, but, well, we could probably peel some of that off. I just noticed my microphone is like down in my chin. Oh, there goes the wire. Alright, well, we'll clean them up and re-put them back in later. What I am going to do so I don't forget is I'm going to put a big solder blob on the pin that it went to. So I can find that pin later. Can't get a blob to stick to it. Of course not. Well, it'll be the one shiny clean pin. That is where our wire went. And then pin 3. I'll try and remember that. Might not be successful, but it's the effort that counts, right? That is not my mega tip. Mega tip, where are you? I need you. I will be out of commission without mega tip. I have micro tip, bunch of replacement tips. Maybe this is the mega. Nope. That's not it. What the heck did I do with it? Timeout. Somewhere in this pile of wonderful stuff is my oversized desoldering tip. And that I desperately must have. Because only one of them exists. And without that, I will not be able to continue. Actually, that's not true. I think I have an old school large solder sucker that I can use, but I don't want to get that out. I knew I was missing something. That's alright. We can't be perfect on our first stream back. That would take all the fun out of it. So while I look for that and organize the stuff a little bit, we're gonna, remember that went to pin 1 and 3. I'm gonna say that about 14 times just so it's like ingrained into my brain. I do not want to forget where that went. Oh, I'm gonna be upset if I lost that big tip. I mean, it's not lost. If I knocked it on the floor or something, I'm never gonna be able to find it. And I rely quite heavily on that. Frustrating. Definitely frustrating. But my fault. I should have gave the bench and everything a once over to make sure I had all my tools in the right spot before I even started, so I apologize. Especially since you have to look at my head when I'm like leaning over trying to look for this darn thing. That's a medium. And I had this entire bench just like totally thrashed and ripped apart too, so there's a good chance it could be literally anywhere. But I will check a couple of spots where if I was having a brain fart, I would put it. And it is unfortunately not there. Man, that sucks. That really, really, really sucks. I'm definitely going to order another one of those today. And as a emergency effort, I'm going to have to get out the big boy, because I do not see that thing stashed anywhere amongst my little junk pile that I haven't cleaned up yet. Oh, the wife is going to kill me because this thing is super loud. Alright, hold on. Now this is a solder sucker here. It's almost too big. I mean, the tip in this thing is absolutely enormous. I usually use it for like larger transformers and stuff, but since I have no idea what happened to the tip, it's probably on the floor somewhere, and I'm not going to delay the video like an hour while I look for it, so we will make do with what I have. And what I have is this beast. It'll definitely get hot enough to clear these through holes, though. And while that's heating up, I guess I'll continue looking for my smaller tip. I have a holder built into the thing. I would have thought I would have put it in there. Like, I have my 4 most used tips in there, but the big one is MIA. Rookie mistake. Oh well. Hopefully this guy will get in there and clear them out. I think it's hot and ready to rock. I apologize if this is like ridiculously loud, but it's all I got right now. These ones with the glue on it are going to be a little difficult. This board has big ground planes, so it's difficult either way. Clogged up. What's the common failure on these, and what am I doing as a fix for this amp? So I haven't found any issues with this yet. I mean, the amp was in phenomenal shape. So since the amp is 20 years old, I started out by just doing a recap on the input board. So I replaced all these caps. You can see the little pile up there. And I'm just going to go through with a recap first and then test it to see what's going on. once we get into the box here where the Class D supply is, we might find something that's burnt or blown or something wrong with it, but I got to get this off and get inside here. There's some caps in there that can be questionable, and also the MOSFETs that are inside here, so I got to get this thing off, and then we can get inside and see what's going on. And right now my solder sucker is jammed, so I got to find a way to fix this. Clean out tube is like 1 millimeter too short. I do not know if I will be able to get that cleared with the tip on. Not having a good night tool-wise. Alright, we got it cleared. Should still be plenty of suction available in this thing. Yeah, I don't use this big solder sucker that much anymore. It's a really good unit. It's a Heiko. It doesn't have any of the labeling on it. I had to replace the housing. I dropped it and it cracked. It's made out of Bakelite. It's a pretty old unit, but it's great for clearing larger pins. I'm going to lead all these first, just to try and help them clear a little better. This first one still isn't clearing good. My tip has seen better days too. It's like really worn out on the inside. Yeah, these are very well designed subs. I just don't like that they shipped them over to China to manufacture them in this whatever year, but they're still pretty quality boards. They use mid-tier caps. They're not, they're not junk by any means, and especially, after recapping it and putting like Nichicon or Rubicon caps in there, I mean, this will be a stellar unit, and it'll last many, many, many years, especially if you turn it off. Biggest problem with most of this stuff is people just leave it plugged into their outlet for 20 years and never turn the switch off on it or never unplug it. That's the number one killer of all these caps, is not unplugging the unit. I'm surprised I am not getting screamed at yet for running this thing. First mission when I finish this repair is going to be to find my soldering tip. And I got yelled at. I don't know if anybody heard it, but almost done. 5 more to go. I'm getting yelled at. I knew that was coming. Alright, last hole. Hopefully this will break free. I'm gonna redo this one just a little bit. Hitting them with lead helps, and I'm gonna resolder them with lead, so that will make a difference. This is probably the hardest part of the repair, is actually getting this board and cage out without totally damaging the whole unit. Unfortunately, you can't really do like the normal wiggle method that I do, because it's like glued on there. They're not easy to get off. They're kind of a pain in the ass. Let's see what we got. We got a couple pins breaking loose. You want to be gentle with this. Don't rip it off the board. You got to break the pins free. Got to work it a little bit. You're not going to break the pins. And even if you do, the headers can be replaced. But if you totally thrash the board, you're going to be in trouble. So just work it a little bit. You know, the solder is weaker than the rest of the stuff. And if we have to repair the through holes, we can. I'd prefer not to do through hole repair, but sometimes that's not an option. So once I get it like kind of loose, then what I do is I start tapping on the pins. And if they break free, those little taps will eventually just knock the whole unit out. I can see them all wiggling now, so they're loose. Now I just got to get them out of there. That's the hard part. Yeah, Connor, turn your subs off, dude. Like, you should unplug them every night. Or if you don't want to do that, get one of those like Amazon Wi-Fi outlets and just like program your phone or something to just shut it off every night. It's the cheapest insurance you can have to make sure your subs will last a long time. $8 Wi-Fi outlet, you know, on Amazon versus a $200 repair. Alright, so we got it out and we did not damage the board, which means I can turn off the mega iron and I don't have to have my wife screaming. Yeah, you could, but since there's so many pins on there, it's hard to do, and it does look like even so I did damage one of the through holes. I gotta see which one that is actually. It's number 4 in. So that's connected to the back ground plane, 3 and 4, so I'm not really worried about that having, you know, it's only a little portion of the through hole. It should be fine. It'll solder back in. Doesn't need to be replaced. The next battle is getting this cage off. And as you can see, it's just smothered in silicone. There's no real easy way to do this either. You just gotta work a razor blade in there until you get it kind of loose. And then peel it. I don't know why they don't screw this on. That would make a little bit too much sense. And in all honesty, you don't really need the shield on there anyways. It doesn't really do much. So if you wanted to, you could just leave that off. It is razor sharp. It's just a piece of stamped metal that they just cut, so it will destroy your fingers. Keep that in mind. Yeah, so I might have some. I printed out these little cards. Of course, I probably won't be able to find them right now. But anytime I send a repair back, yeah, I don't have any. I put a little note in the box that says make sure that you unplug your subs or disconnect the power when you're not using them. Just a reminder, because yeah, that's the number one damage to these things, is just killing the caps by not powering them off. It's surprising how many people are like, well, you know, if it lasts me 5 years, it's good, and I don't care. I mean, I don't have disposable income like that, so I take care of my stuff. But that's my my number one tip. If you want to avoid, you know, spending money repairing your equipment, unplug it. Very simple. Yeah, there's two different versions of these control boxes. It depends on what version you have and what year it was made. This one just happens to be one that's siliconed on, so it's just a nightmare to get off. Like, you literally just have to rip it off, and then I have to clean all the glue off so I can glue it back on. I was playing with one of these yesterday. This is the bigger brother out of a digital drive, and it's screwed together. There's no glue on it, so you just pop the screws out and it comes right off. I'm going to save that one for a future video. I don't have my little screwdriver kit down here, of course not, because I'm using it upstairs on another project right now. This is coming. We'll get it. My super dental picks doing the job. Gotta love my dentist. He gives me all these old dental picks. I guess they have like a lifetime on them, or they something happens to them and they have to get rid of them. So he saves all the bad ones for me and gives them to me. These big ones are really strong. They're good for like ripping stuff like this apart without destroying everything. Alright, there we go. No blood today, so that's a good sign. So even inside here, I mean, this thing looks clean. I have not seen an amp this clean in a very, very long time. So to get back to your root question, what's wrong with this thing? I have no idea. We're going to find out, though. It could have just been, you know, maybe he was having some hum issues with it, and the hum was caused by, you know, one of the caps starting to age and fail. That would be my primary guess. You know, 20 years is about all you're going to get out of any equipment that has capacitors in it before they start failing. Once they hit the 20-year mark, you really should think about having them, at a minimum, recapped. I'd say, you know, anything after that, it depends on where they're made. It depends on, you know, if you unplug them or not, and it also depends on, you know, how much they're driven and how much you push the amp. If you're running it at 80% capacity, you know, you might only get 10 years out of them caps. It all depends on how hot everything gets and, you know, how long they remain powered on. Your average cap, like the caps that I use to replace, you know, all these little guys, they're only rated for, I think, 3,000 to 5,000 hours. Well, that's at the full operating temperature, which you really never get that hot, but you know, 3,000 hours is less than a year. So there's all kinds of like charts and studies and stuff on how long they really last, but I'd say with quality caps and a decent piece of equipment that's well maintained, you should get roughly 20 years out of it. That's just like a rule of thumb. Morgan, do not put links in my chat. Yeah, Velodyne makes a pretty good product. They're hard to work on because I can't find any schematics or information out of them, so everything is just kind of guesswork. But I mean, they're not bad to repair. I haven't figured out how to fix the servo control in the digital drive yet. It's something I want to do because if I can figure that out, I'll be the only person in the country that can fix it, aside from Velodyne. And I don't even know if they repair their audio equipment anymore since they got out of the business. Maybe they sold the business off, I don't know. Alright, most of the silicone's gone. Not much I can do to make this thing look pretty again, that's for sure. So I'm going to pull the board out, recap it, check the FETs, give the board a once over, make sure there's like nothing burnt or crispy looking on there. Check these voltage regulators that are hidden in there. And that, you know, all of that doesn't mean anything. I still might be soldering this back in and taking it back out again. There's really no way to verify that this section of the board is good. You just have to kind of hope it's good, and if it's not, then you got to find the problem. But as long as you know, if you don't have blown fuses, you don't have blown FETs, and your caps don't look like they're just totally thrashed, generally a recap will get you up and running. Generally, not always. If you find schematics for these, send me a link. Either a link or send me a message if you don't want to post it in the chat. I would gladly explore any resources I can find that would make it easier to fix some of this stuff. I know the digital drive schematics. I've looked and looked and looked, and I have not been able to find them. I even paid for some, and they ended up not being the correct ones. Here's another problem, that when the components get old like this, the MOSFETs start to stick. And they used silicone, which is nice. But it's hard to not damage the silicone when you're trying to pry the FETs loose. You gotta be really careful. In this case, I was lucky today. I damaged it a little bit, but it's on the side of it, so it doesn't really matter. So here is our, basically the entire amp is right here. This is the Class D section of the amp. Pretty simple board. I mean, just got a pretty stiff power supply, switching supply, and it tracks the audio signal. And then here's your output MOSFETs. One for positive and one for negative. Nothing on this board looks bad. There is one nonpolar cap in here. I think the other one has two nonpolar caps in it. The bigger brother of this, but nothing Nothing appears to be burnt. I mean, the board doesn't even look like it's got hot. So we'll have to probe around a little bit. I think these are voltage regulators. What are these? Those might be part of the power supply. Well, let's see what we got. Check for shorts. That's the next step. See if we got any bogus outputs. I don't think we do because the fuses aren't blown. Usually for outputs are toast. Your fuses toast as well. So nothing appears shorted. Those are diodes, not transistors. We'll check these. I don't think I'm going to find any shorts. I think if there were going to be shorts on this thing, you'd clearly see them. Even the 5-watt resistor doesn't even look like it was getting hot. I highly doubt this thing has seen much service life. So we got 3 caps here, 2 caps here, and 1 here, non-polar. I'm going to recap it, and I will recap these. Oh man, the wife's going to get... I might have to take this into the other room and pull these caps off. I don't know if I have 4 of them. These are where the money's tied up in the recap job, is these big caps. See, I got some shorties. 470s at 200. I'm going to load it up with some shorties. These are CapEx on 470s at 200 volts, 85 degrees C. These are Nichicon 470, 200 volts, 105 C. So much better quality cap. Yeah, send me that SPL10 control board schematic, or send me a link to it, if you wouldn't mind. That'd be awesome. The SPL10 control board is very similar to the SPL12. That would definitely help. And I've never looked for the SPL. This is the first SPL I've actually worked on. I usually just do the digital drives, but a guy I did a previous repair for sent me this, and you know, he asked me if I'd check it out for him, so I said, yeah, I'll have a look. And I was mildly surprised to see how good a shape it was in. Especially for being, 21 years old. All right, let me throw my email in chat there. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Alright, I'm heating the solder circle back up to do the recap on this board here. Still looking for my tip while this thing's heating up. I have a strong feeling that this desk is going to get ripped apart tomorrow looking for that thing. Alright. Almost up to temp. We're at 680. It's really neat how they wound this transformer. It's just toward wound, and they just threw a tiny little coil around. I assume that's a sensing, either current or, yeah, it must be a current sense. I don't think it would be an auxiliary tap or anything like that. Pretty interesting the way they wound it. Velodyne had some smart people working for them at one point. I don't know what the hell happened. Something drove them out of the business. They made some pretty damn good stuff. Actually, this tip is not going to work. We're going to have to go with the micro tip, I think. Alright. Getting excited to get this thing back together. These big caps I'm going to pull off in the other room. Otherwise I'm going to get grounded for making too much noise at 1:30 in the morning. My bedroom's like right above where I'm working at too, so that large sucker is kind of annoying. I guess I can understand that. These little guys are going to be hard to get off. I'm pretty sure this is a 4-layer board. So there's probably a lot of ground plane in there. Yep, as I figured. Difficult. 33 microfarad at 35 volts. I don't think I have that. I have 33 at 50. That'll work. It's a weird number, 33 at 35. I'm guessing all three of these are going to be the same. .33 at 35, and this guy's got to be the same. 33 at 35. 4-layer boards, you got to be really careful when you're desoldering them. You don't want to damage the internal copper. That would just be a really bad day. So be gentle when you're working on something like this. I'm going to try and do all 3 of them at one shot here. Triple check the polarities too. If you don't have to, you don't want to pull this board off. Removing this board is not fun. And these are not marked, but the squares are positive. So I'm going to use the solder sucker to actually solder them back on, just so I can get the heat into there. I'm just going to blob it on for now. It doesn't have to be pretty. Can make it pretty on the second pass. Got my cables all twisted. There we go. So yeah, get your caps tacked in, get them standing straight on the board. You know, however you feel they need to be. And then what I'm going to do is pre-snip the leads. And I'll use the actual tip of the solder sucker to solder them all in place. You might have to go back and retrim, but that's okay. I'd rather get a really good solder joint right from the start and have to trim the cap leads again than have a cold joint that fails when this thing's been used for, 2 hours. A little bit of extra up front goes a long way. A little bit more tedious, but in the end it's worth it, especially when you're connecting to a large ground plane. So, I got beautiful fillets on there, so what? I gotta go back and retrim them. That ain't the end of the world. But I know I have really good joints there, and I don't have to worry about vibrations or anything knocking any of those loose. Just triple check my polarity, everything's good. So I got these two and then this non-polar that's hiding over there on the side. Just heard an email come through. There they are, schematics. Thanks a lot for sending those over. I really do appreciate that. I'm sure I'm going to run into an amp that I, can't readily find the problem. Maybe even this one tonight. That kind of information is valuable to have. It's amazing how much better the lead solder clears from these holes than the lead-free. It's mind-blowing. Alright, what do we got? We got another 33, so this is probably going to be a 33 as well. Yep, 2 more 33s. .33s at 35, and we're putting 33s at 50 in there. That'll be just fine. It'll last a little bit longer, but it saves me from having to order parts, which is the most important thing. And most of these old, for whatever reason, companies, they design these amps and then they just don't change them. So KLIPSCH, when they made the Synergy series, the Synergy amps are basically all the same. The power supplies are a little bit different. Then they went to their reference series, which is the RW series, and the amplifiers are, the basic circuit design is almost identical. Again, just the power supplies and a couple of, other things change. And I found that Sunfire does the same thing. So they come up with one real good design, and they just ride it out through all their product lines, and really the only thing that changes are like some crossover points and the power of the power supply. So it's kind of funny. I'm sure all these manufacturers do that. Velodyne, Sunfire, KLIPSCH. And I've worked on a ton of Sunfires. I still have a bunch that I have to get done. But it makes it, a little bit easier to work on when, you kind of know what you're getting into and you've actually seen it. Alright, we got good joints on those. One more cap. And we're ready to go, and that's this non-polar job. Fortunately, I'll be replacing the solder in there with lead, so if I do have to pull it out, it'll come out again. 100 microfarad, 10 volt. Got plenty of them. Non-polar, and this is non-polar. I might try and actually no, I'm not going to try and power it with the original caps. I'm going to go in the other room and pull them off. And I'll say why, because when I screw this thing back together, I don't want to have to take it apart again. It's too much messing around. I want to pop the screws in and be done. This has a pretty good sized ground plane on it, so I want to make sure we're getting a good connection on there. Alright, since this board is buried, we'll clean it up a little bit. It's 600 watt. That's a lot of power out of these amps. This one said it was 750 RMS on the back of the plate. That's a lot of power out of a small amp. This is no clean. I don't really need to clean this, but the reason that I'm doing it is just because it's behind the board, and I don't know if there is some sort of an issue down the road. You wouldn't be able to see it, so it just takes a second to get the majority of the residue off. A little extra precaution. Back in she goes. Let's see our heat sink. So there must have been an SPL15 at some point, or the SPL12 used 4 sets of outputs because the board is configured to have 4, and so is the heatsink paper. So these guys were set up for some serious output. Trying to get some of this silicone off just because it's going to be a nightmare to deal with. Now comes the fun part, trying to get everything relined up. Yeah, I have a Sunfire True Super Junior, which is a 8-inch, and that tiny little speaker will do 120 dB. It's insane. I repaired one. Actually, I did a full restore on it. I had to do like a recone on the woofer and repaired the amp, and I was testing it in my living room, and Looney Tunes was on, and Elmer Fudd shot his shotgun, and that sub, the sound that it made was so loud it scared the hell out of me. Like, I literally jumped. It was so loud. I thought it was real. Like, majorly impressed by such a tiny little sub. So I have to think that the Velodyne would probably have a similar effect, and I mean really have some smoke and output. It's hard to think that a small driver and sub could put out that much, SPL, but I guess if they're designed right. I generally prefer smaller subs because the bass they produce is much cleaner and tighter. Large subs, you really have to, you got to cross them over low. Like, if you got a 15, you don't want to really put anything more than like 85 hertz through that. I've never had a 15. The biggest actually, no, that's not true. I had a Velodyne Digital Drive 15, and that thing was a complete monster. Too much for my house. I don't have a big house. You need like a 20 by 30 room for a sub that size if you really want to get into some movie and theater. Yeah, weight's crazy. Like, I have a lot of problems shipping this stuff. I had an Earthquake 15. It was a demo model. It was I think it was one of one, like the only one in existence. And it was like the prototype of the MK5 that I don't even know how I ended up with it. I found it online. I bought it and refurbed it, and I sold it, and a collector bought it, and I packed it with 2-inch thick foam, double-walled box, and shipped it UPS. and UPS just completely thrashed the sub. So it's like irreplaceable, one of a kind, and then they blamed it on me and wouldn't cover the insurance on it. So yeah, 50, 60, 80 pound subs, any kind of audio equipment, shipping it is a nightmare, let alone handling it. Just moving around the house sucks, but since I mainly, like either restore or flip this stuff, I gotta make sure I can, get it halfway across the country. I'll never use UPS again, though. Screw those guys. FedEx really isn't much better. Postal Service has been the best for me. I know a lot of people hate the USPS, but those guys have been phenomenal. If they break something, they pay for it. They're pretty honest. At least my branch. I don't know. I know a lot of people have various issues. Now the fun part, getting all this damn glue off without getting any skin or fingers off. This is actually silicone, not glue, so it's not terrible, but it's still annoying. I guess the cage is to keep the switching noise from interfering with your other equipment. I don't know what it would really interfere with, but that's the way they designed it, so that's the way I'm going to put it back. Worst part is just trying to get it off because the knife even doesn't want to cut it good. And I got more of this hard rubberized, I don't know what this stuff is. This stuff is crazy hard. It's not epoxy, but it's like, it feels like honey, like hardened honey. That's the only way I could describe it. I don't think I'm going to be able to get this little batch off. It's really... if I cut my mat, I'm going to be so mad. It's coming off. I care about my fingers less than I do my silicone mat. One more chunk. If I could snip this off, we'll be in good shape. Especially if it doesn't go in my coffee. Alright. Good enough. Give the bottom one pass with the... That's as good as it's gonna get. Sorry, buddy. I know this guy won't care. He's super cool. I'm going to glue that with E6000, so the next guy that works on it, it'll be even more difficult to get off. We got two caps on here. I'm going to do these two now before that becomes an issue. And I think what I'll do is I'll pull these four main tank caps off and get ready to put the Nichicons on there. But I have to go do this in the other room. Like, my wife is sleeping above me, and she will literally just go spastic if I start making all that noise. Can't say I blame her. I mean, that old solder sucker's really loud. I'm guessing these are either going to be 47s or 33s. 47s at 25. Yeah, I don't know what that stuff is. That glue is nuts. They put a huge drop of it on there to hold it down to the plate. The good news is it's not conductive, but bad news is it's hard to work with. I guess while I'm doing the caps too, I can go get my audio cable because we're getting close to testing time. And it'll be good to see this thing come back up. I'm just kind of carelessly tacking these in place again, just because the ground planes are still pretty large on this. I'm going to use the solder sucker to really hit them with some heat and make sure that they're not going to cause me any problems. Cold solder joints are never a good thing. Alright, I am going to go in the other room and remove these four. My desoldering tool is just too loud, and it's too late to be using it right in here, so I will be back Alright. Caps have been desoldered without making too much noise. So we will pop these off. Just checking my polarities here. Square pads are usually positive. I'm just verifying. Yeah, they are. So those will go into the scrap bin. Trim off our lovely silicone. Some of these traces do look a little whooped, but I'll check continuity on them. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but just to check, so you can see there's one coming under the board. Looks like it goes to this leg here. I just want to make sure it's not burnt. That could go to one of these. Here, let's lift this paper up, this insulation paper, and just get a look. Just to verify that the traces aren't bad. If there was going to be a failure, it would be in the one place where you couldn't see it. And I'm really only concerned with the resistor traces. So they seem good. That one. So yeah, the resistor traces are good. I've seen them burned up on other versions of this amp, so I just wanted to verify before throwing this thing back together. So we are on the home stretch. Yeah, I did check the FETs. I just checked them for shorts. And there were no shorts. Generally, if the fuses are not blown anywhere on the amp, the FETs are good, both power supply and output. If the fuses are blown or popping, it's almost always a shorted FET. That doesn't mean that they're, not good. I mean, there could be other issues with them, but I'm just gonna assume for now that the FETs are okay. I gotta remember where that little spacer went. Where did that little spacer go? Was that on this guy? No. No, it was not. That means that little spacer went on this guy here, which means I have to take it all apart again. I think it went on that, maybe. Unfortunately, I don't remember, so I'm going to have to get in here and look and make sure it didn't come out of here. I don't think it did, but it might have. Luckily, I don't have to tear it completely apart. I think that spacer went on there. We will find out shortly. If I go to put everything back together and I'm missing a spacer, well, I know where it is now. Not 100% on that, but I'm not going to glue the cage on until I'm certain that this thing is going to work, so. Correction, I'm not going to glue the cage on. I am going to put the cage on. Alright, let's try this again. If I need to, there should be enough room to kind of pop that out and make it happy. And if I really have to, I'll go back and rewatch the video and see where it fell off of. I think it fell out of that torrid though. It fits that screw, so I'm going to say that's where it goes. Alright. Let's see, 2 hours and 45 minutes in. Not too bad. I'm not working at like an insane pace, just kind of chugging along here, so. I think this amp will be much happier with our Nichicon caps in there. Double check, triple check, 5 times check and make sure your polarities are right. Even though these are shorties, they're still the better caps to put in. Just make sure they go in the right way. If you don't put them in the right way, it'll act as a dead short. You don't want that. It's no good. This side of the plate, they both face the block, and this side they alternate. Don't quite know why, but that's how they do it. Alright, here we go. Soldering all this stuff back in. I need a kickstand. The big ones are 470 microfarad, 200 volt. I put 105C in there. The old ones were 85C. These ones, if you look at the pattern on there, you can tell it's meant to have the bigger ones. I mean, these shorter ones, or the skinny ones will fit in there, but they must have called for larger caps to be in there at some point, because that's the way the silk screen is laid out. But I have really tall ones and I have really short ones. They'll both do the same thing, but my tall ones are even skinnier than these. And I don't use the short, fat ones, so, I mean, either one of these will work. You can get these in a ton of different sizes, too. So I just picked the ones, I even got some monsters. Real big one. But it doesn't matter, as long as the value's right, the capacity is right, and the temperature is at least 105C rated. I only use 85C when I absolutely have to. I might have to bust out Big Bertha to get these soldered in. I'm having problems getting the heat in to the ground plane. This is a 100-watt iron and it's struggling to flow these. Even doing both of them at the same time, it's not happy. Yeah, I'm gonna have to, anything that hits the ground plane. So I'm just gonna quickly just blob the solder on these, and then I'm gonna go get the big boy and I'll swirl it around each one of these pads to make sure I get a really good thermal bond. And it's leaded, so I'm not worried about having to remove it again. It should come right out. Some serious ground plane when you can't use a 100-watt iron to solder the pins in. And I'm going to clean all these up too. Make sure it doesn't look like garbage before I send it back. Caps are soldering in nicely though. You really don't want to use the small iron for these large joints. And I have a big 250-watt iron, but that thing takes like 35 minutes just to get hot. This one here I'll hit because it's going directly to the ground plane. Same with this one. Put Big Bertha on that one to get the heat in there. Probably just hit them all. Alright, everything's pre-soldered. We still have that wire that goes from here to the third pin in. Our little factory jumper wire. I believe it was the third pin. I think it was. That's where it reaches to, so we're going to call it third pin. Ray's Harding, spamming my channel with bullshit. What is this? No. Alright, be right back. I gotta go get my solder sucker again. Alright, let that thing heat up. And while that heats up, I'm going to tack this onto the one pad. This is 22 gauge. You wouldn't think that would be a hard joint to solder, but it does not want to solder in. There we go. I will double check that for shorts. I don't think we will have any, but I'm still going to double check. Alright, this guy should be hot. This thing heats up quick. This guy is insane. Hopes they have big irons like this. It really does make a difference. Especially when you gotta hit a ground plane and get, you know, plenty of heat in there. Those two pins were shorting together, but it's still on a ground plane, but I don't like it that it's sticking to that. The solder mask might have wore off, though. There's probably nothing I can do about that. Still a good joint. I'm not really worried about it. What a difference this makes, though. When you got the large tip, you can get the heat down in there and just let it flow. I'm not too happy with that joint, but we can touch that up. I'm really just hitting these just to make sure that the solder flows. And you don't got to get them on there long. I mean, this thing really does pump out some heat. I'm happy with that. I've soldered automotive battery terminals with that. I mean, that solder sucker is a monster. I'm going to just tack this one lead on here a little better. It did not look like it was sticking good enough for my liking. Just want to make sure we got good contact, that's all. And I am going to clean this board because there's a lot of residue on there and I want it to look nice. Oh geez. Somebody didn't tell me I forgot to hit my button. That's why I don't make the big bucks. It's not production quality. This is cheap basement audio repair. Looks better already. I think I need to put some more alcohol in my container, though. It's the other thing, alcohol. I don't know about where any of you guys live, but alcohol's a hot commodity right now. Luckily I have a little bit, but there was a time when I couldn't get alcohol. Can't repair circuit boards with 70%. You need 91. Preferably 99. Still a little bit of glue residue on this board. Mildly annoying. Clean up our little spot where we probed there. Yeah, everything's hard to get right now. It's nuts. I used to, clean all the boards and hose them down and spray them and brush them. I don't do that now because if I run out of alcohol, I'm in trouble. This is the boring part of the video. Clean up and prep work. Well, we'll give it a little once over. Make it look like I knew what I was doing. This wire is going to need to be glued in, so I'm going to do that now too. Because this guy sits upside down, so I will not be able to access this wire again. Hit it with the E6000. Check for shorts first. I'm pretty sure it's not shorted, but make sure our grounds are good. Excuse me. I don't know why that pin is shorting out. That shouldn't be shorted to ground. Unless it's grounded on the top side. Pin 1 is reading shorted. I don't know why. Let's see what the ohms are. Maybe it's really low ohm. No, that's pretty much dead short. Interesting. It shows dead short, but it's not connected to the ground plane on the bottom side. At least that I can see. Cleaning around the clearance pretty good just to make sure it's not something stupid that I did. No, it's still showing dead short, so I'm going to glue this down anyways and say that it's supposed to be that way. I really don't know. I'm going to give this glue a minute to set up. Basically, anywhere the wire touches something that is potentially metal, you want to make sure there's some glue on there. Reason for that is vibrations. You don't want the wire to vibrate and have it cut through the jacket. I'm going to let that set up for just a minute. And actually, while this is setting up, I'm going to start assembly of the input board. Get this guy back together. So the glue is you know, it's set up really good. It takes, you know, probably 12 hours to cure, 24 hours to cure, but it gets like this really nice, thick, rubbery consistency in pretty fast time. So now we need our spacers. Don't forget your spacers. Don't be a dummy like me. Alright. I believe there's only 2. And they go on the volume and phasing pots. We'll go ahead and screw in our plastic components first. So we got 2 screws by the audio level inputs, and we have 1 screw by the RCAs. Do the RCAs first. Always do your screws backwards until they click once. Especially when you're working with plastic screws, you can feel it and you can hear it, but you want to get into the same thread path that they were before. Otherwise, you really risk stripping the screw. They'll hold a lot better too if you get it into the original grooves. These nuts are always a pain to get in because they're recessed down behind the panel. I have no tips for that. I guess the best tip I could give you is have some girly fingernails so you can get down in there and grab it and get it started. Mine are like freshly nibbed off, so of course it's going to be difficult. These pots are very heavily greased, so you generally don't need to use deoxit on them. Most of the time, though, I do use deoxit on the pots if they have openings and I can spray some in there. It just helps reduce some of the scratchiness. But they use a ton of grease on these things, so they should be good for a while. Don't need to make them crazy tight. We're going to take our low pass all the way up to 120 and our volume all the way to min. Leave our power switch on auto, phase on 0, and we don't want to do any crossing over. We want to do direct. Actually, no, we'll do direct. We don't need all that extra audio changing crap on right now. The screws aren't made out of plastic, they screw into plastic. I gotta remember, I know the one shorter screw went in the middle, and that got 1 spacer. I gotta remember how all these screws went back in here. Like I said, this is not my normal amp that I work on, so some of this stuff is kind of new to me. We can take our tape off now because our glue is set. I'm just going to start screwing things in and hope for the best. We'll see what happens. Chances are I'm going to have to go back and watch the take apart on this just to make sure I got everything in the right spot. I'm pretty sure the center one had the shorter screw. Again, you don't need to make these screws insanely tight. Just snug them. We're not, trying to clamp anything down. We just want to make sure that they got a little bit of reinforcement behind them. I believe the pad went here. It didn't go there, and it didn't go there, so it has to go to these two. And it had a clamping washer or nut on it. So the other short screw, there's a lot of short screws. There's 2 long screws. I'm going to guess the 2 long screws I don't know where the 2 long screws go. I'm all out of whack now. I know this goes here like that. At least I think it does. That didn't have... Oh yeah, it did have... So there were extra nuts, I remember now. This thing got double nutted, so the 2 long screws go up here. And one of these had a star washer back behind it. That guy right there. And there was another one over here that had a star washer. I gotta clean this mess up too. I got used caps and parts and junk everywhere. These button heads. So I'm pretty sure we used a long screw. Here. With the star washer that I am not seeing. This star washer went over here. So it's an internal. A black internal star washer. I need to find you. Where are you? 2 long screws went here. And there. And then a nut went on them. And then I believe a spacer. No, the other spacer went here. There were two stacked too high. This is what I get for not putting them down in specific locations. We'll get it though. I'm not worried about it. Let's see if this glue is setting up yet. I really want to start putting the legs on that. Yeah, I don't think that's ready yet. We gotta let that glue set up a little more. Not much, just a little bit. Alright, so we just gotta figure out our screw lengths now and we're good to go on this one. And it's just 2 long ones. Those guys go here. That board screws in there. There's no overlap. But there is this thing, this insulator pad. Alright. I think we got it now. Shorties go into the pad. So that one goes there. Then there's another short one. Actually 2 more short ones and 2 long ones. I'm gonna guess that the 2 short ones go here and the 2 long ones go where they were double nutted. That's my guess. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Thanks for looking that up. Another way to tell too is if you look at the board, you can see the teeth where they dig in from the star washer. It's hard to see on there without zooming in, but there's little bite marks in there, so you can see that this one doesn't have any bite marks. And I believe for whatever reason he had 2. Because all the other ones had bite marks on them. I don't think the links are really that critically important where they go, because nothing else screws into them. This guy did have a star washer, though. We gotta find our missing star washer. There it is. And again, you can just look at our hardware too. And that should tell you which one had the star washer, because the paint will be all like worn away on it. I'm just guessing these 2 are the longer screws, but at the end of the day, like I said, it really doesn't matter. As long as everything's held down where it needs to be held down. Alright, those are in. Well, this guy went on top. It's like a noise shield that is sandwiched in between a couple of pieces of foam. Not quite sure about that, but okay. Use our nut driver and we'll snug this down, not too tight, just give it a little. You make this too tight, the nut's just going to chew right through that piece of, it's like aluminum laminated between some kind of plastic, so you don't need to go hog wild on that. It does look like it's just a skosh off. Anyways, that's how it went, something like that. And then the main amp board screws into this, so let's put him away and we will go to this guy. Now that glue still isn't set, but I don't think it's going to droop or drip anywhere either, so let's get this thing back on. We want the orientation to be right. That's kind of important. So our side that had our waxy glue, so our brackets go like this. So we get a screw with a star washer, a spacer, and then our bracket. And our bracket goes this way. So you only need like a 37% photographic memory to do this. Doesn't have to be like full-fledged, remember everything, just most. I'm not going to really tighten these in. I'm just going to loosely put them on, and then I'll tighten them all at one time. Get this bad boy back together. Yeah, I don't know why it has that shielding on there. It's kind of weird. I've seen it before, but it's very rare. Even on the Velodynes, I think it was the DD15 that had the shield on there. But none of the DD12s I've worked on have had it, and that doesn't mean they never had it. I mean, who knows? Some of these subs that I buy are just in atrocious condition, like missing parts. People have been in there and soldering on stuff and changing stuff, so who the heck knows? But I get them super dirt cheap and then bring them back to life. It's part of the fun of it. Like, if I had to pay top dollar for all this stuff, there's no way I would be in this hobby. No freaking way. Especially seeing what some people pay for some of this equipment. Like, wow. I think the digital drive series, I think the 15 was like 3,500 new. That's a lot for you. I mean, you could buy a car for that. Maybe not now, but 10 years ago, you could buy a really nice beater for that. Alright, we're going to wrench these down. These ones can be a little tighter because they're going into a steel bracket. So if you got some torque stress you need to relieve, go ahead and wrench on these and crank them down. You know, our glue on our little repair wire still is wet, so we are going to be careful. I'm going to bust out the kickstand. This is an absolute must. Gotta have a kickstand when you're working on amps. If you don't have a kickstand, grab a scrap 2x4 and make yourself one. This one on top. Well, that did not go on top. I think it went behind. There we go. That looks right. If it's not, we're going to say it's right. And then we'll look at the video before we package this up and ship it. I'm sure my buddy won't be too mad as long as the amp is working and it looks factory. Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one because I don't know what was wrong with this thing. I didn't even want to plug it in and test it because you know, if it did work, I would wonder why it's here. So it's better just to dig into it, give it a brand new recap. I gotta get the bit. It's maddening that they use 2 different size button heads on this. know that ratchet sound is annoying, but button heads, you gotta be careful. Don't over tighten them. I know I've said that before, but I'm gonna keep saying it. Strip these bad boys out, and you gotta pull the plate back off because something's wrong with the repair. You're not gonna be happy if you can't get the screw out. I would have definitely went with Phillips here, but not my choice. They wanted to make it look classy, so they went with button heads on the outside. Socket heads, anything would be better than a button head. Yeah, I've never seen one of these with brackets either. The brackets seem to be exclusive to just this amp. The digital drives don't have them. The digital drives, instead of having a ribbon cable like this, the amp plate just stacks on top and then screws into these screws. Make sure pin 1 is going to pin 1. I'm going to leave this header alone for now. It's probably worked in the past, so I don't want to monkey around with it until I know something else is wrong. It's weird, there's some glue on the speaker terminals. Alright, it's back together. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is going to be getting audio into this thing. Yeah, that's a good point. They probably had to put the power amp section flat like that because the magnet's probably like right here. And that's probably why they have this shielded so well, because that magnet's right there. That's a pretty good point. I really didn't think of that, but that's probably spot on. Alright, volume's at minimum, crossovers at 120 hertz. We're going direct, phase at 0 to start. We're going to use some 1970s Radio Shack style RCAs. In my opinion, these are audiophile quality because spending $500 on a pair of cables is for people that are ridiculous. And excuse me for a moment while I download an app on my cell phone to do the testing. It's called PA Tone. I will show everyone what it looks like in a minute. I've used a function generator. I haven't installed this app for a long time, so I apologize. Give me a minute here. There is one just called Function Generator by CoolSoft. We can install that one and start there, but PA Tone I think is better. So this one's the CoolSoft Function Generator. Oh. I'm getting app crashes on here. So right now the frequency on channel 1 and channel 2 are, it's set to 440. That's what middle C. turn that down. I thought you could do it with the slider. I don't remember. Oh, there we go. Enter value. So I want, let's go 39 hertz. There we go. Channel 1, channel 2, which is left and right side, 39 hertz. I think there's a way to lock those both together. You could make it mono or stereo. I don't know. There's a lot of options on here. It's just seems like a hell of a lot more than you need to test audio, but it works pretty good. It's called Function Generator by CoolSoft. You do need to make sure that your media volume's turned up. And it should be working, so alright, we should have function going to it. Let me get a speaker hooked up. Got some speaker connections. I'm going to hook up my little Mighty Scope. And this is just a plain Jane woofer that I have hooked into here. Definitely not recommended to take the full power of what this thing can throw out. 750 RMS, this speaker would probably just spontaneously combust. Not meant for that kind of juice, but let's see what we get out of it on our little scope here. Hopefully we'll get clean audio. That's what we're really looking for. We're definitely going to start current limited. So right now we got nothing, and it's nice and clean. We're going to make sure our power is off. Yeah, I don't want to do a website because then I got to plug it into the computer and mess around with that, and it'll probably end up playing in the stream and either cooking some speakers or annoying everybody. I'd rather just do it from my external. Like I usually use this little function generator. This thing's awesome, but I broke it. So tomorrow we'll be back in business when I get it. So we have our power hooked up. Everything's plugged in. I'm going to throw the switch on current limit and see what happens. So the amp came on. I'm getting power coming out of it. It's not drawing excessive current and nothing blew up yet. Let's see what we got. You know, I'm getting... It looks like a modulated sine wave. It's not very loud though. I wonder if my phone volume's kind of low. Yeah. Let's try that again. Now it's really loud. Give me my live feedback. There we go. That looks a little better. So my input was really low, so the output, it still looks a little bit modulated. But it's a clean sine wave. I'm sure that's the way that this thing is set up to operate. I'm feeding it an analog audio signal from my phone at 39 hertz left and right channels. We're going to check both left and right by actually I don't even need to unplug it. I can just turn it off on my phone. So there's right only. We lose some volume. There's right off, left on, right on. So both channels are working. I'm sending in a sine wave, like I said, 39 hertz. I'm measuring on here 39.062. So, I mean, we're pretty much on the money. So now I can start, I'm going to lock these two channels together. I forget how to do this on this amp. Actually, if I turn it into mono, and I output channel 1 on both of them, there we go. Now I should be able to dial the frequency in. And I know you guys can't see that because I'm just messing around on the phone, but right now I'm at 18 hertz. Obviously there's roll off on the volume there, so I can slide it back up. Now we're back at 37, 38, 44, 44, 40, 49. It looks fairly good. I mean, it's a tiny bit modulated on the bottom of the wave, but I'm not getting distortion in there, and I'm gonna guess that that's just part of the operation of the sub. Like, if you look at the KLIPSCH subs, like the let's get back to 39 hertz here. Yeah, 34 hertz is where the speaker resonates, so it starts to sound funky. But the KLIPSCH R112 and R115SW, they'll have a bunch of hatching on the output, and that's just the way that the power supply, operates. I mean, this thing definitely packs a wicked punch. Let's make sure our feature's working. Change our phase. You could see the waveform drop out of phase when I flip the switch. So our phase is working. Our crossover, let's see if our crossover works. So it should start to attenuate, and it does. Might be hard to see on the camera, but you can see the waveform start to compress as I drop it down to 40 hertz. So our phase switch is working, our auto on off is working. I had it on auto. Actually, it's when you give it more volume, it actually looks nicer. This thing likes to put out some juice. Alright, I'm going to power down, and we're going to put this thing through its paces. Sorry. Alright, we're going to go to the silent speakers. Those can handle, that's what a 4 ohm load at 300 watts. So we can listen to that and see how she plays out. We won't be listening to anything, but it'll be nice and quiet, but I will be able to crank the output of this thing up something fierce. Make sure we can really pump some juice through. This is one of the new additions to the workbench, so I call this the silent speaker. I mounted it on my rack, and then I have a scope probe that I could just hook right in. So I just got to change my probe out and then plug the wires in, and we can test high output levels without waking up the whole neighborhood with 30 hertz. So I'm powering on full now, no more current limit. And here we go. Let's a little bit of a hum that I heard. That might have been the auto on-off circuit tripping. I'm going to switch it to full on. Jeez. So I'm at I'm saying I'm at 39.5 hertz here. Let's I gotta turn the voltage down because it's gonna peak out my scope. Change the timing a little bit to get a little bit better accuracy. So it's pretty darn close. It's about a herd off. Geez, 25% volume, and I'm already hitting 50 volts peak to peak. So no, I'm sorry. 30 volts peak to peak. 40, 50. I don't know, we're about 50% volume right now. Let me put the knob back on. It's getting warm. I could smell it. This thing probably hasn't been baked in a while. Had a good fry. But I could smell it getting hot, which is good. You want it to get hot. It means it's working. It's probably my resistors getting hot too. Yeah, they're getting kind of toasty. So yeah, I mean we have. Let me see if I can turn the voltage up to. I'm pegged at 20. The scope can't handle it. But I mean I'm feeding this into a 4 ohm load and throwing out 50 volts. I don't know what that is in watts, but it's a hell of a lot of watts. Actually, I could just calculate it and tell you really quick. Let's do some math. Math is fun. Checking to make sure we have enough air to get under this thing. Stand by. Let's see how many watts we're putting out into 4 ohms. Nope, that's what I want here. So we got voltage. $50 volts peak to peak, and our resistance is 4 ohms. That's 625 watts. So, I mean, we are absolutely just hammering this thing, putting out roughly 12.5 amps into 4 ohms. We hit 50 volts peak to peak. So, I mean, we're pretty damn close to the rated 700 watts. I'm not going to run it that high for a long period of time because, an amp never sees a pure sine wave for that long. So, I mean, this is really an abusive test. But 52, 56, 57, 58, 59. So we're almost 60 volts peak to peak. And it still maintains sine wave. It's 20 volts per division on my meter. Let's see what we're at 60. Now I'm really curious. So into 4 ohms at 60 volts peak to peak, this thing's putting out 900 watts. It's rated 700 RMS, 1500 dynamic, or 750 RMS. So, I mean, obviously you can't run it like that for an extended period of time because you're just going to annihilate the amp, but we have successfully put out 900 watts for at least a few seconds on this thing. So I'm going to say that this amp is probably fixed and working quite well. I'm going to leave it on at a moderate load, probably 200 watts. Let's see how many volts I need to keep it at 200. I just don't want to burn out my resistors, that's all. So I want 200 watts. That's 28 volts. So if we get it down to 26, we'll get the RMS down to 26 volts. Close enough, 25.9. And I'm just going to let it run there and just cook for a little while. And it's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to, vet out that we're not going to have any thermal related problems. Like, yeah, the dial bridge is getting pretty hot. I can barely keep my finger on it. But pumping out 900 watts, you're going to do that. You're going to, wow, can't even touch the resistors. I will literally melt my fingers. They're that hot. That is scorching hot. I might need to put a fan on those. It's nice that it acts like a little heater, though. Wow, those things got hot. Well, I think it's safe to say we probably resurrected this amp. Whether there was a problem or not, that I don't know. But I mean, this amp was in phenomenal condition when I received it. 21 years old. Probably still worked, halfway decent. I'm gonna guess that the caps were starting to fall out of spec. I'm not gonna measure all of them to find out which one was bad. Maybe one of them was leaking a little bit, probably getting a little bit of hum or some noise. But this amp is basically brand new now. I mean, it looks, aside from a tiny little bit of dust on the back of the plate, it looks phenomenal inside and out. It's putting out some serious power levels, like no problem. Like if I crank the volume knob up, I mean, this will go right up to 60 volts. That's insane. That's 900 watts. And I'm looking at our peak-to-peak voltage. But still, pretty incredible for an amp, a small amp this size, able to put out that amount of power. Velodyne has never ceased to impress me with what they can do. I've had one. I've had a DD10. I've had a DD15. I've liked them. They're extremely difficult to work on compared to a lot of the other ones, but they made a good product. So if you have a Velodyne and it's not working, I would definitely consider trying to resurrect it and bring it back to life, because these things do pack quite a punch. Yeah, I'm surprised the heat sinking on this isn't better, actually. Like you're punching out a kilowatt of power. Your heat is all concentrated, right in this box here, and this box is getting hot, like hot to touch. So I don't know where the heat dissipation comes. Maybe, it relies on the air movement from the woofer to help keep it cool. That's why I'm running it at moderate levels too. I don't want to, keep this thing cranked up to, 600 plus watts for an extended period of time without having any airflow on it, because yeah, things will eventually destroy themselves. But it definitely appears to be working quite nicely. So kind of a boring repair. I didn't really get into any juice on here. We didn't find really anything wrong with it. I'm going to say this was probably a death due to old age, and the caps were probably failing. Well, we can check a few of them too. I'll put this aside and let it continue to cook itself. Every amp I work on, I do, basically a burn-in test. So I get them up to temperature, let them stay at temperature for a little bit, make sure they're, not going to fizzle out, or something that I didn't miss is going to burn out on them. So we'll let this guy sit on the kickstand and roast for a little while, and just for the hell of it, while it does, we'll check a couple of the caps. Bipolar is usually a culprit. These things fall out of spec pretty easily. What is this? 100 microfarad. Based on the condition of this plate, though, I'm going to guess that there's not going to be a whole lot bad. So that's good cap within spec. It's still a cheap cap, so we're not going to do anything with it. I'm not going to check all these. I'm just going to grab a couple of them and see, where they're at. 220. These larger ones that were inside the preamp. So yeah, there you go. There's part of the problem. This is supposed to be 220. It's reading 8.6. So, death due to age. Let's see, read some of the other ones here. At least we know now why it was failing. It's capacitor failure, which I kind of expected. This is what, a 470. This one's probably still good. Yeah, that one's good. It could have just been one cap. That's all it takes is one cap to screw the whole batch, but yeah, this 220 is reading 164. So they're a little bit labored. It's this little guy, 4.7. It's not even really worth checking, but do it anyways. That one's good. I don't know if I checked this. Yeah, the 470 was alright. Let's grab a couple more. The tank caps, these are almost always good. You don't really ever have to worry about those. They don't really fall under heavy abuse. Some of these 47s though looked kind of sketchy. It's good. These are going right into the scrap bin. So this is 47. No, that's 0.47. We can't even measure that. I mean, we can, but it's not worth it. So this 47's reading 30. So all the caps are starting to show their signs of age. The worst one being this 220. This is probably the reason the amp was having problems. You know, you're trying to get 220 on there. I don't know what part of the circuit this was in, but we're not even at 10. So this cap right here is the main reason for this amp having issues. I'll measure a big one here. You want to check the big ones? Just for scientific research, we can check the big one. The big ones are almost always good. 480. So that's like basically brand new. 462, that's within tolerance. What's this guy? 463, that's in tolerance. 471. So all the tank caps were basically like brand new, and I can grab a fresh one right out of the box, and it's not going to be really any better than that. And 448, so 20%. So yeah, the tank caps, I mean, they're good caps, but they're just cheap caps, and they're 20 years old, so they're really not good for anything except the recycle bin. So at least I can tell a guy, you know, hey, this amp died a death due to cap failure. I apologize, but that does happen. Alright, I'm going to just give another quick check on the little scope. I want to make sure that it's still cranking. I love this battery powered scope. This thing's awesome. Yeah, we're still pumping out, you know, right around 200 watts, somewhere in there. Good clean signal. See if we can fatten up the wave a little bit. So it starts to roll off around 20 hertz. Sweet spot's probably right around 34 to 25. 32, between 32 and 34, that's the sweet spot for almost every sub. I don't know why. That's where they really like to have most of their punch, but this thing's working great, and it's, you know, too hot to touch. My silent speaker is gonna set my wood on fire pretty soon if I don't turn this off. So I'm gonna go ahead and So yeah, I got the scope on Amazon, and then I 3D printed this base, and I just put a couple 18650 batteries in there. I can charge it right from the little 9-volt port on there. I mean, it's probably my favorite tool. I have a really sweet scope on my bench, but I rarely use it. I don't even know. Yeah, I can't get a camera down that far to show you anybody, but I got a good 4-channel scope, but I don't need it. This little guy does everything I need. It shows up really nice in the camera. It's you know, if you want to get into doing cheap repairs, you don't need super expensive equipment. The one thing that you do need is this, preferably with a large tip that I can't find. But well, I'm gonna shut down. Let's see, we're coming on 4 hours in. That's enough for tonight. I think we did good. We got this thing fixed. I'm gonna send this guy an email and let him know that it's done. Send him a link to the video. Hopefully he'll watch it and be happy. And we're gonna come back tomorrow and hopefully do another one. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking around and hanging out and making some comments. I always appreciate it when there's like somebody to interact with when I'm doing this. It's a lot less boring for me. So I appreciate that. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have some time to come back and work on another one. It won't be a Velodyne, I don't think. Tomorrow it's going to be some more KLIPSCH and maybe a Sunfire. I'll have to see what I can get off the shelf. So thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.